Welcome to Bartender 2016. I am Harry Lauer, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Bartender. Bartender 2016 has been vastly redesigned from the ground up with many new features and advancements to help companies create, automate, and control their labeling and marking needs. Bartender 2016 brings significant and powerful improvements to the creation and use of data entry forms. The all-new Bartender Integration Builder replaces the Commander Companion application, enabling you to seamlessly integrate Bartender's printing capabilities with virtually any enterprise business operation. The new Bartender Administration Console includes the features of the previous Security Center, enabling administrators to not only control security, but also manage integrations, monitor bartender-related services, and administer the Bartender system database from the same application. Bartender Print Portal, formerly Web Print Server, has been completely revamped and provides a browser-based interface for selecting and printing Bartender documents. Print Portal is included with the Bartender Enterprise Automation Edition and features a more intuitive interface. Bartender 2016 introduces improved database support using ADO.NET drivers to natively connect to your database. Bartender 2016 greatly expands its support for RFID encoding. The new VB script editor is a powerful tool, simplifying your ability to create and edit custom code. And now, Bartender 2016 offers both 32-bit and 64-bit installations. Bartender 2016 has been redesigned with these features and more, not only to meet today's demands, but to strategically position Bartender for the future as we venture into new business opportunities and offerings. Manny Castro of Bartender Technical Services will now provide an overview of these features.
Thank you, Harry. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today you will learn about the exciting new features offered in Bartender 2016. We're going to go through the new features Harry mentioned and go into some detail. Bartender 2016 is our biggest release as of recent history. A lot of its components are redesigned from the ground up. Today, we're excited to present how these new features change the way you create and design your labels, automate your printing process with a brand new integration platform, and how all this allows you to really just control your printing and labeling environment. As always, Bartender Designer continues to be an easy yet powerful tool for creating any label format you may need. With 2016, we had an assortment of exciting features that further aid you in designing and making your label formats. The changes begin with data entry forms. In Bartender, a data entry form is a dialog that displays at print time that allows you to pick, type in, or enter data to print on your label. This allows you to have a dynamic label with the data you need to print, and this can all be done on the fly. So now, Bartender 2016 adds to those new controls and just betters this experience. So using what we call the record picker, you can get a live view into your database and select the records to print. This is useful if you have a database and need a quick, easy way to search for and select what record you would like to print. You no longer need to rely on just the query prompt or hope that that print operator knows the whole string or that whole serial number. We actually have a couple types of database controls that are fully customizable to get the behavior that you need when selecting those records to print. This just makes it as simple and efficient as possible for the data to be selected. So now for the text input box, we did still used to offer the text input box in version 10.1, but we now added an autocomplete feature. As you would expect, Bartender has the ability to store values that were previously entered. This just helps your end user enter the data that they need to print. However, we take that a step further by giving the text input box the ability to connect to a database for the suggestions of what the input is. And additionally, this connection is independent of that of the label design. Theoretically, you could have 1 or 2 or 5 different user input boxes, and each one can be connected to a different database in a different field to help you populate your label. You are also now able to create multiple forms, giving you multiple prompts at print time if needed, or you can also conditionally print these, and these can be conditionally printed based on data in your database or data that's somewhere throughout your labels. Moving on to the VB script editor, those familiar with previous versions will notice that it's actually completely different. And that's because it's been redesigned. It is a brand new editor. If you've never needed to write a VB script, You may be wondering how this can add value to how you create your label formats. With a VB script, you're able to do things like generate a custom check digit, run formulas or equations on data. Also, you can just use any of the built-in abilities of VB script, such as giving you a unique or custom way to import data or connect to some other type of database. Usually what I say is, if you can't do it out of the box with Bartender just because you have such a particular situation, you can probably do it with a VB script. And even more so now true with the redesigned script editor. We now have some features such as syntax highlighting, search and replace that makes it that much easier to write your script. And actually, all these scripts are now located in one central location. You're now able to navigate through one dialog and create or modify scripts regardless of where they're located on your label. So if you've written a script for a check digit on your barcode, you no longer have to search through all the barcodes on your label format to see which one you wrote that script in. You can now navigate via this one panel on the left there. We also now have what's called script libraries, which allow you to share scripts throughout multiple label formats. So if you have multiple label formats that are all connected to one script library, you can make the change in that one script library, and that change will carry over to all the labels that are using that particular script library. Reusing a database connection is an extremely widely used method to populate your labels. Mostly this is because you're able to create just a single label format and print dynamic labels all based on what's in your database. For example, turning 5,000 records in your database into 5,000 printed labels, all by using a database connection. One of the other changes in Bartender 2016 is that we now have a new database connectivity component. The new database connection is not just much easier to use, but it's also much more flexible. You're able to connect to different databases throughout your label design process. For example, you can connect during the integration process, the label design process, or on your data entry form. Whereas we just saw that you can connect or make a connection from a control on your form, such as a text input box. We also have what's called named database connections. So now what a named database connection is, it's where you connect to a database and you assign it a name. From there, you're able to use that again if you're trying to create a new database connection. Or additionally, another scenario where you can use it is, let's say you have 100 different label formats that all use that same database connection. If the password expires or the server name changes for whatever reason, we're now able to change it in that one named database connection, and we don't have to open each label up like we would have had to in the past. This just makes it much more easy and efficient to change any of those database settings using that named database connection feature. Now, additionally, you can still use your old labels from version 10.1 or 10 and going back in Bartender 2016 as you have in the past. For our next section, when we think about automating a print process in Bartender, we think of the companion application Commander. Well, with Bartender 2016, we've actually completely rethought our approach to integration from the ground up. We've taken a lot of requests and just self-evaluated our process when it comes to integration. This is actually the most significant change of Bartender 2016. We start by separating the task of building and testing an integration and deploying and administrating them. The life of an integration begins in a new application called the Integration Builder. Here, you will completely build and design your integration. You're also able to test that integration. That includes things like making sure that the user account that you're using and all the directories and printers are all working together to get your integration across. So you're able to test just as if you were in a live environment. So now once an integration has been fully tested, you are then able to deploy that integration. You can deploy to another machine on your network, such as a server, or you can deploy to your local machine as well. From there, these integrations are deployed to the administration console. You're able to have more than one integration at once, so there's no more need to take down your whole production server for testing or troubleshooting, or because you want to add a little bit more to your integration. You're just now able to run multiple, and you can see all those from the administration console. Since we no longer have Commander, you will no longer see that Commander service in your services panel. This new integration platform is built on a new set of services. These services work together to run your integrations. The integration service at the top that we see there, it waits for an event such as a file to drop. It also executes actions like deleting a file once processed. The print schedule service manages your print jobs, and most importantly, very importantly, it guarantees the orders of your print job. So now Bartender 2016 does this all on its own without any special setup or particular settings. So essentially you build your integration and you deploy it, and it just simply works. It manages itself now as far as processes and handlers. There's no need to anticipate for load or resources. We just do our best to run based on what's going on in your environment. Moving on, we see a little bit of a workflow as far as an integration and what is actually happening from beginning to end. So we begin on the left with trigger events. This is what the integration service is waiting for to occur, such as a new file to drop. The integration service then executes any actions that it was set up to do. These include writing to a database or moving or deleting a file, or just sending the print job off. From there, if it is a print job, it gets sent off to the print schedule service. This is where that happens, that the print schedule service intelligently assigns the job to the correct print engine in order to guarantee the order of your labels. This whole process begins there with the trigger event. That's what triggers your integration. We have quite a few new integration methods that were highly requested, some of those being web requests and database integrations. So now with web requests, this allows Bartender's integration platform to listen for a request to come across the web. That request event then triggers a print job or a non-print action. For the database integration, we can now monitor a database located in your environment, perhaps one that's in your in-house management system is using. We can then detect any changes or new records for a given database, and that can be enough to trigger your integration. We can even take the information that your system or that your ERP system has placed into that record, and we can use it as part of the integration, such as populating a label. Now that's done using what we call variables, which we will cover shortly. Continuing on with what can trigger your integrations and labels to print, we add support for a few file options, so no longer are you limited to just a local or a network file when integrating via the file drop method. You can now use an FTP location or a Dropbox location, and that just gives you a more centralized location if needed. And these file systems are added almost as a named directory, if you will. So once you add a Dropbox account, you're able to use that directory throughout your integration to build as a scan directory. If you have two different locations, for example, that one location needs to trigger a label to print in the second location, and perhaps resources aren't there, or we can't set up some sort of VPN for whatever reason, you can use the built-in functionality of like Dropbox, for example, and just use that as your central scan point to get the integration triggered from one location to the other. We've spent plenty of time discussing how an integration works and what can trigger an integration. But afterwards, then what, right? So after you get a trigger for an integration, we will execute or perform any actions that you've added or configured. In 2016, we added an assortment of new actions, giving you a lot of flexibility when it comes to designing your integration. Some of the new actions are the ability to perform file actions, send email responses right back to a database, or perhaps send a web request response. One of the big changes that really got me excited when we started learning about Bartender 2016 is that we have the ability to better use variables now throughout your integration. You can actually take data contained within a URL, a web request, or a database record, or a trigger file, and in turn, use that data as part of your integration. So a field can select your printer. It can also select the label to print. And then after that, the fields after that can still populate your label format. And all this is using variables. So if we look on the bottom right-hand corner there at the record browser, that scenario could be used to print 4 different labels out, all with one trigger file. While you can use commands like Commander Script or how you would use Commander Script, you no longer have to if your system isn't able to create data in that format. In the past, we've pretty much said if you need a dynamic label or a dynamic print experience like that, you want to use Commander Script or XML. If you weren't able to do that, we didn't have much options as far as dynamic trigger files. With the way that we use variables now, instead, you just tell us what your data looks like. You make that database connection from within the integration process, and from there, we're able to just print your labels out. Also, I should mention as well that you can import your Commander task list, and we still support Commander Script. Just now it's not called that anymore, it's actually called print command script. So you're still able to do that or use that functionality if you have that built into your system already and just need some of the new features on top of that going forward. A lot of printing environments, especially in the space of compliance labeling, require revision control or security policies to be in place, and this is for trackability as well as just the company that wants to have visibility into their printing environment. With Bartender 2016, you're able to configure and enforce all your requirements and really better control your printing environment. We begin with the administration console. This actually is a new companion application, and it replaces Security Center and the system database. From this one central location, you're able to configure your security. You can choose what actions users are allowed or denied. This is where you would configure any electronic signature or label encryption. You can also check the status of your system database and configure any administrative tasks that you may have, such as setting up maintenance for it. You can monitor your integration. You can view the logs, make sure everything is running as it should. And we now give an extensive attention to logging, which makes trackability, troubleshooting, and just visibility that much easier and with more detail. You're able to just drill into each integration independently, I should add, and you can view step-by-step logs as to what is going on with your integration. So it will go from deleting the file to printing the file to sending an email response if that's what you have configured. You can also deploy any new integrations that you have from here. So remember that we can run more than one. You can run as many integrations as you need. And then lastly, with these new services that are running your whole Bartender suite, you can monitor those services from this panel here. So if a service should need to be restarted or you need to check to make sure that it's running, you can access that via this panel as well. Additionally, you can use Bartender Print Portal as your web printing interface and control what users see and what they have access to. So now, Bartender Print Portal replaces Web Print Server, but it was actually also remade from the ground up, like a lot of other components in Bartender, as you can see. It offers a lot of new functionality. So, for example, if you have different departments printing labels from Print Portal, you now have the ability to configure your web page to have different folders and files visible, all based on who logged into that computer. Your shipping department will only see its shipping labels, while your receiving department will only see its receiving labels, just as an example. That was a very highly requested feature, and we've actually added that with Bartender Print Portal. Following with that, you can also set users as standard and admins now. It's no longer just an anonymous authentication. This means that standard users cannot create global printers. All the printers they create are only for their session, while admins are allowed to visit and make changes in the administration page, and also they're able to create global printers for all users to use. We have some new print methods available as well. We can use the Sitar service to print to cloud-based printers. If you're doing some client-side printing, we now have a service that you install. So you take this service and, well, actually, if you don't have it installed, it will prompt you and you will want to install that service. And after that, that's it. You don't have to fumble around with any kind of ActiveX add-ons or anything like that, or worry that you're using a compatible browser. Instead, use any browser on a Windows machine, make sure that service is running, and you're ready to do some client-side printing. Additionally, all the controls that we've mentioned are now available through the web interface as well. If you do have a need for a database picker because you need that live view into your database at print time, we're able to use all those features through Print Portal. That does conclude our session, and I know that is a lot of information to take in, but it is with very much excitement that I want to say welcome to Bartender 2016.